Oh, chum, what up?
Yeah.
Oh,
what
This
what
chicken
is this
debate. I
debate?
was
Why is
I
there
was
someone
following.
streaming with a thing that says debating ask yourself?
I've been following this thing since the Destiny part, and that shit was fucking
Okay, so
embarrassing.
it's gonna be one on one.
I don't even know what it is that's really going on. I just heard that the Destiny and
Yuki wants to
Rem
debate veganism.
were talking about me on a stream.
So basically, I hold the position that actually vegans are bad people.
Wait, but sorry, I'm confused. So who am I talking to? Who's Has? Is Has
I'm
infrared?
infrared show on Twitch. Haas. I got 2,000 viewers right now. I'm extremely famous. If you don't know about me now, you're gonna know about me very soon. I'm an undefeated debater. Never been fucking debated. Never been defeated once.
Okay. Um, yeah, and what there's
um,
Avi's here too, which is good.
Isaac.
I told him that we might have someone dropping by. Is that MJ? What?
Yeah, what
Oh,
up?
I haven't
Just
talked
to
to you in
give
a
you
while.
some insight, I was gonna give you some insight. I don't know. Pogan like ran away from Has, which is really funny. So
Who ran
there's
away from
that.
him?
Pogan did.
Pogan.
Hogan, yeah.
That
New
sounds.
American Left. You ever heard of New American Left? Maybe you haven't. You're
Yeah.
not
Oh,
familiar with
no, no.
Hogan.
Of course I know Pogan. I just it doesn't sound like him to like run away. But I don't know Pogan that well, so yeah. Anyway, Avi's here too, I guess, which is good. What? So what? You wanted to talk about something? You want to debate something? What? Like?
Debate.
Okay, well, and what do you want to debate?
Vegans are bad people.
You hold the view that vegans are bad people,
Yes.
and what does bad mean?
Vegans are bad people because they think animals and humans on the same level.
Um, so I don't think that quite answered the question. So you gave a reason why you think people are bad or vegans.
Yeah, they're bad
Wait,
human
wait,
beings.
no,
They're bad human beings.
we gotta take turns. So I heard you give a reason why vegans are bad, which is that they believe humans and animals are equal. But setting aside whether that's true, I don't think that answers the original question of what you actually mean when you say bad. Like, what's bad mean?
Well, I think as human beings, part of what it means to be good is having a certain relationship to humanity in general, to other human beings. So if I'm saying they're bad, it's because they have failed to demonstrate that the manner by which they relate to other human beings satisfies the criterion of being a good person.
Okay, so bad means that I'm gonna need to get my head around what you just said. It means that what their interactions with other humans don't live up to some kind of standard. I'm not
I'm
sure I
basically
followed what you're saying.
I'm basically right now relying on common sense. So, what are you actually asking me right now? Are you asking me to give you some kind of ethical system? Do you want me to give you some kind of like
Oh no.
moral system, or what are you asking me?
Well, I guess like the reason I'm trying to ask, well, what I'm asking you is just what you mean by bad. But it sounds like you're trying to get at like you're asking like what is the reason I'm asking you about that, right? Like that's what you want an answer to.
Yeah, like when someone says someone's a good or bad person, as we tend to actually know what they mean by that, right?
Um, Wait, sorry. I feel like we're jumping all over the place. You had asked me a question a second ago, and I was gonna try to. You're gonna have to forgive me. I'm a little bit high at the moment, but you asked me a question a moment ago. You asked why I'm asking about badness. Like that's the vibe I got from the question. It sounded like you wanted to know why I'm asking you what bad means.
I'm asking you if you're asking me to propose some kind of ethical or moral system within which good and bad are going to be defined in a airtight kind of
Oh,
axiomatic way.
when you say moral system, do you mean like a normative ethic, like deontology or like utilitarianism or virtue ethic?
Yeah, whatever you want.
No, no. Okay, sorry. So yeah, there's some confusion. So no, I'm not. you know, like the three tiers with ethics, right?
I don't know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, so usually like philosophy is like typically
You
divided
mean
into
like the divisions?
yeah, yeah.
Like yeah, deontological, utilitarian, and then what's the other one?
Virtue ethics, but that's a division of different kinds of normative ethics. So like the bigger picture
Sure.
is like there's philosophy overall, and that has like four kind of main areas. There's metaphysics, epistemology, logic, and ethics. And then within ethics, there are sort of three areas or like three tiers, right? So there's meta ethics, normative ethics, and applied ethics. And it
Good.
sounded like what you just asked me is if I'm asking you to spell out what your normative ethic is, aka like is it like deontology or utilitarianism or some like fusion model or some other thing, and that's not what I'm trying to get at. So that's not why I'm asking what you mean by bad. What I'm asking is more of like a kind of like meta ethical question, like what is badness itself? Because I guess this is kind of
I'm not particularly comfortable with like these completely strict divisions between the spheres of philosophy, because when you ask me this question, I also think this can be a metaphysical question. What is the good? What is the bad? It can also be a metaphysical question.
yeah, I don't think that anything that I've said would suggest that there's not like bleed over between the different areas in philosophy. So I don't think we disagree about that. But you were wondering about what kind of question my question was, right? And my question wasn't like, can you spell out your normative ethic? It was more of like a meta ethical question,
like what you're asking, what is bad?
Yeah, and the reason I think that you probably want to understand the reason why I'm asking it. At least I would want to understand that. So I'll kind of like tell you like the reason.
Sure.
The reason that I'm asking is just like there's different kind of meta ethical positions, just like realism about morality or anti-realism about morality. There's a bunch of different like questions, obviously, in meta ethics, but like I'm not really like a realist about morality. So like when I do moral talk, I'm usually just talking about my preferences. And if you are engaged in a similar kind of moral talk or some kind of like anti-realist moral talk, you might be saying something that I think is true when you say vegans are bad people, because that might just amount to you saying that you have like a preference against people being vegan, or something like this. Once we
No, it's not a matter of a preference.
Okay.
I think the view, for example, that
But before just before you clarify your view, you understand why I'm asking though, right? Because it's like if you mean this kind of thing, I actually agree with you. If you mean this other kind of thing, I don't. So I'm just looking at like what do you mean, so I can tell if there's a disagreement.
Well, okay. Let me actually, since we went down this path, I think I have to actually clarify what I originally said and my intentions thereof and so on. So when I say vegans are bad people, right?
Yeah.
When I'm making this statement to you, a person I don't know, obviously what I'm trying to say is that from the perspective of a reasonable, let's call it moral agent, or just in general a reasonable other human being, other person, there's an intuitive sense that you have an idea of what I'm saying. Now, whether we can dissect that statement from the perspective of absolute certainty, right, is a different question. But when I say actually vegans are bad people, what I'm trying to get at, or what I'm trying to the thought that I'm trying to convey implicitly assumes, for example, that we agree that there is a widespread assumption on part of vegans that what they are doing means they are good people, they're better people, right? Am I wrong, or you can?
I'm not sure I'm following. I'm not trying to be a dick or anything. I'm not sure
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
understanding what you're saying.
So, for example, if I were to say, like, for example, I'll give you this. If someone were to walk in, it's almost like I'm saying a counterintuitive.
Like, are you clarifying what your original claim meant when you said vegans are bad people, or am I like not following at all what you're trying to do right now?
Yeah, contrary to what vegans claim, they are actually bad people.
Okay, so I know
Overall, bad quality human beings.
Yeah, so I know that that's the claim you made originally. I mean, I guess you added a little bit there because you said contrary to what they claim. So I guess that also adds
Well, I just
that.
assume that's,
Yeah,
usually there's unspoken
yeah. I'm just
understanding.
being precise that that's a slightly different claim. So it's like a proper superset of the set of
I think, but
propositions
no,
that
no,
you
no.
have.
You're working from the perspective of absolute certainty. That's how you're dissecting
Wait,
it.
whoa, sorry,
Like,
one sec. We have to not cut each other off like crazy. Like I don't mind being interrupted, but just let's try to keep interruptions to like if the other guy like misrepresents us or like misses the point or something. Um, because what I was saying was the claim you just made. You said like contrary to what vegans say, they're actually bad people. That was, as far as I understand, you're trying to clear up your original claim, and that was basically just the original claim. It's like a kind of like a proper superset of the original claim because the original claim was just that vegans are bad people. So I guess the new claim
no, no,
has
no. But I was
the
giving you an adequate level of context with which you will be able to determine what I actually do mean when I say they're bad people.
yeah. All I was saying is just that kind of new version of the claim. It seems like it's the same claim. It just has this added bit that vegans actually claim to be good people, but just I'll tell you what I'm hung up on because like I'm still hung up on sort of what the claim means, like whether the claim is vegans are bad people or the claim is contrary to what vegans say they're bad people. I kind of just want to understand what bad means to you because if it means something that cashes out in like a kind of anti-realist way, like I might not disagree with the claim because it might just come down to you saying that you have like a preference against what vegans are doing.
No, well, I'll give you an example.
Well,
In
can I
everyday
just before your
ordinary
example,
language.
I'm happy to hear it, but just so it's clear what I'm hung up on, I need to understand what you're meaning when you use moral language.
No,
Like
I
bad,
heard, I
good.
heard, I
Oh,
heard what
okay.
you
All
said.
right. Sorry,
Before
my
I
bad.
give you the philosophical perspective I possess on the nature of morality,
Yeah.
I think to clarify, in ordinary language, when human beings communicate to one another that this person's a good person, this person's a bad person, they actually aren't making any philosophical claims whatsoever. They're relying upon an unwritten level of unconscious understanding, if you will, or unwritten, implicit understanding that doesn't make any kind of philosophical claims. And these kind of implicit understanding is the beginning and end of communication. If you don't have this, then you're not communicating to the full extent. You're not exhausting the full breadth of actual human communication. Now, for example, what most people call philosophy, let's say analytic philosophy or something, if I communicate to you in like an airtight, absolutely consistent way to verify my positive claim that vegans are bad and let me qualify what bad means, when I approach it in this kind of mechanical way where I'm breaking down everything and putting it into an airtight box, I am not actually exhausting the full breadth of what those words actually mean. For example, in an ordinary context or an intuitive context, I'm isolating them and putting them into a box. It's almost kind of like we're programming a computer. We're not actually. So when I'm talking, right, I'm not here to help you program a computer. I'm here to. Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you are not able to understand this kind of implicit, intuitive, implicit understanding. So when I say this person's a good person, this person's a bad person, maybe you kind of just register this at like a computer. You just think like, oh, what is bad? What is good? You know what I mean?
Well, okay. So I guess the question is, do I know what you mean? I have some idea. I think what you mean. I think you're trying to say that there's an ordinary language understanding of moral terms, and that's all you're using. And when I'm asking you for a more detailed concept, I'm kind of like missing the point because you're not talking
Yeah,
about
but
one
when
such
we
concept.
transition from the moral and ordinary use of language at this level and arrive at what you call a more detailed concept, there's a qualitative difference. It's not just that you're arriving at a more detailed concept, you're arriving at a qualitatively different claim. You go from saying something that relies upon a good faith, implicit understanding to some kind of system of airtight, kind of abstract certainty.
I'm just not sure that I'm getting what you're saying. Like, yeah, I mean, you could try to convey it more, I guess, if you want to. It sounds like you think that I'm asking too much of you when I ask you like what you mean by bad. Like you want to say you're just using a common understanding.
I think you are. I think you are. Yeah.
Yeah, because this is kind of like what I think here. I think that there's cases where we have some type of ordinary language word, and like for whatever reason, that word is of interest to philosophers, and it's often not totally clear what the ordinary language meaning is, and then philosophers will do kind of like conceptual work to try to understand what that is. Like
You have
if
to
I
understand. Ask yourself. You have to understand something.
yeah.
I am not just a guy interested in philosophy. I am also interested in psychoanalysis. So obviously, to me, concepts do not premise the ordinary use of words. When someone says good or bad in an ordinary context, they're not actually making reference to the concept relevant to philosophy. Philosophy does something that fundamentally betrays our ordinary use of language.
I guess that all I would say is I'm not sure what the concept is supposed to be when you say bad if it doesn't cash out in one of the kind of ways that I'm talking
because
about. I'm just
because
not
bad
quite sure what it
is
means.
not simply a concept. It's more than what philosophers will attempt to draw out of it as a concept. It's more than what philosophers treat it as a concept.
Okay, well let's like forget about the word concept maybe. Like you agree that we have to have some kind of significant overlap in understanding of what terms mean in order to like
Sure,
communicate, right?
sure. But the way in which humans communicate the meaning of words, again, in the ordinary context, because remember, 99% of people don't care about philosophy and never will. The way they convey that is by a
Why you
means
gotta hate
deep.
on philosophy?
I mean, it's the truth.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but
human
like, I
human
mean,
beings make do with being able to convey things,
yeah, I'm
whatever
just
you call
fucking
them.
around. I'm just fucking around. Sorry, continue what you're saying.
Sure, yeah, yeah. So, um, in that sense, there is no way to get rid of the element of the unconscious, the intuition, what is unwritten. There's some kind of unwritten, almost non-negotiable level of mutual understanding. When you remove this from the equation, all meaningful communication breaks down.
So, what I would agree with, assuming this is what you're trying to say, um, is that we have to share a certain amount of our meaning. Like we have to agree about what things mean in order to like have a conversation with each other, in order to communicate.
And that meaning could never be reduced to something fully intelligible from a philosophical, conceptual, or axiomatic, whatever perspective.
Well, I don't. When you say, see, that's a lot of language. Can't be reduced to something fully. I forget the adjective from an axiomatic perspective. Like that's a lot of shit in a sentence
Right.
right
Well,
there.
what I'm
So,
okay. I'll try to shorten it.
yeah.
That meaning could never be reduced to the form people attempt to ascribe to it.
Are you suggesting that like our natural language communication is rich in a way that's going to be hard for philosophers to capture?
Not hard, but impossible.
Okay. So, yeah, you think that we're just going to have a hard, well, not an impossible. I guess you think that it's impossible. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So you're saying you think it's impossible to properly or to completely capture our natural language
The
meanings.
breadth of meaning.
Yeah, and by capture them, I don't. I mean, we could talk about what capturing them means, but like, whatever. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that I could, for the sake of argument, just grant something like that, like because there's a lot of technicality about when you talk about when something is possible or not. Like, what modality are we talking about? Like, logical possibility, physical possibility. Is it really logically impossible? Like, maybe not. I don't know. But like, I could just grant it. Like, say that we can't do it. We can't like perfectly capture whatever exactly that means, like write down on paper the full extent of our natural language words or something
Well,
like that.
I just think
Wait,
if
let me
you
finish
were,
my thought, please, before this. So I could agree to something like that, but it seems like my kind of problem would still stand, which is like I have to have enough of an idea of what you're talking about to like actually like proceed in the conversation, right? And if we can't get a perfect idea, like that's probably not the end of the world. I just need enough to like be able to have the conversation.
so sorry, can you repeat that? What did you say?
Quick version is I could just grant that we can't like perfectly capture our natural language meaning if we try to like write down exactly what a word means. But I don't think that anything I've said requires that we be able to do that. I just need to like share enough of an understanding of what you mean to be able to like have a
No, no,
conversation.
no. Firstly, it's not simply that there's too much wealth to it to be able. It's too much. Like it kind of makes it seem like it's a matter of it's too infinite to be finitely captured. It's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say when you attempt to formalize meaning, you are going outside of the bounds of what meaning actually is. So it's
Well,
almost kind of a more ontological argument. Like it's
well,
about what meaning is. It's not about the fact that the reason it's impossible for philosophers to reduce meaning to the form they ascribe to it is because upon doing so, they are not actually arriving at what meaning. They're doing something else, which takes for granted, by the way, uh, an implicit and non-negotiable sense of meaning.
um, okay, so I don't think that I gave any like account of why it would be impossible to capture natural
Okay,
language.
okay.
Wait, please
Just
let me.
beyond that.
You can't. You gotta let me get my thoughts out. So I don't think I gave any account of like why it would be impossible, and I didn't even select a modality to like when we talk about possibility or impossibility. It's like usually like you do it within some modality, like logically possible. So like a logical modality or like physically possible. So I didn't even select a modality, let alone give an account of like why something is impossible. I just said like I can just grant for the sake of argument like it's impossible with respect to some modality to capture natural language meaning entirely. I just don't think that it makes a difference because what I said was I just need to share enough of your meaning for the conversation to proceed.
I'll give you
So
an example
it's
of
wait
why
wait
I'm saying
but
all
this
this.
is the core of the point though is it doesn't we don't have to be able to perfectly capture what we mean. I just need to understand clearly enough that we're able to
Yeah, I
communicate, right?
understand. I understand. When you ask me a question of what is bad to you, you're asking me to convey my perspective on what is bad, correct?
Um on what is bad. Yeah, I'm asking you to share with me the meaning that the word bad has to you.
Sure, that's great. If in order for me to be able to convey to you the real meaning of that word, I have to do a great deal more than possible within a voice chat. I have to write you a beautiful poem or some kind of Greek tragedy work of art, or I have
Okay.
to I have to perform something
Well,
practically in
you're
real
welcome
life.
to do like an
Yeah,
interpretive
please
dance or
don't
something
interrupt
if
me.
you.
You're really adamant about me not
Sorry,
interrupting you, so
I was
don't
trying
interrupt
to
me.
I was trying to be funny. My bad.
Yeah, the whole point here is that we derive our sense of the meaning of words from things like that, from things that cannot be pinned down to what can be conveyed in a voice chat. I mean, I can sing you a song and maybe that'll make it click for you or something, but what else could I do?
Yeah. So just I was just trying to be funny. I don't mind for the record cutting in. It's just try to do it like within reason or whatever. So yeah, don't feel like you can't cut in. Yeah, so if you want to say that like moral terms, they do have a meaning to you, but it's like, it's not the kind of it's not like an easily conveyable meaning. Like, let's say I'm talking to like a new English speaker and I say the word chair and they don't know what I mean and just pull out like Merriam-Webster and go like, oh, it's like four-legged object used for sitting and they like get the idea or whatever. You want to say that moral language terms like bad are not, they're not the kind of words that you can just define straightforwardly like that. It would take like, there's apparently it can't even be conveyed in voice actually on your view or in a voice chat. Presumably the fact that the voice conversation is happening in Discord isn't the the problem. It's like that voice isn't a good enough medium to convey the subtleties. But yeah, I could sorry, just let me, okay, is there a problem with what I said so far, or can I get the point across here? Like I'll just say the last little bit, I guess. Like that could be the case, right? Maybe you do have an understanding of what bad means that's like rich in such a way that you need to do like some intense work to convey it. And all I would say to that is like, okay, and like you're welcome to, and like whenever you do, we can like have conversations that involve that word. But until then, we're kind of like at a bit of a standstill.
Okay, I'll try to simplify things to speed it along, okay?
Okay.
My belief is that we both, whether you admit it or not, have an idea of what it means to be a good person or a bad person.
Can I cut in?
Well, hold on. Not yet. We may not agree upon that, and we may have differing philosophical perspectives on the meaning of bad and good and moral realism and anti-realism, and that it's just reducible. It doesn't matter. There is some kind of good or bad, and its content, right, is what I'm here to debate about. So there's no need to get into this. There's no need to fucking open this semantic black hole. If I say, for example, vegans are bad people, it would be more reasonable for you to respond by saying, no, I disagree. I think vegans are actually good people. And then maybe we could begin from there. Your conception of good and my conception of good and bad, it has to be imperiled. Its actual content has to be imperiled in the debate. We don't actually begin. I don't believe you begin from a predefined good or bad. You imperil the content of good and bad by means of its actual content. So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, we are never going to be able to capture the wealth of intuitions and assumptions and whatever that go into good and bad. But what we can do is, by means of a debate, actually see who can demonstrate which position is more correct.
Okay, so the reason that I went to cut in is I think that you might have a misunderstanding about my position. Are you under the impression that I don't have a concept of badness? Infrared, you're lit up, but I'm not hearing you. You might be having a glitch over there. Can other people in the chat like type, tell me if you can hear him or something? Because I see him lighting up, but I don't hear him at all.
Well, okay, I fixed it.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not about having a concept whatsoever. I think you have some kind of notion. Whether I believe that this notion is conceptual, it doesn't actually matter. The words good and bad have some kind of meaning to you.
Let me not use the word concept then. I can rephrase.
Yeah, it has some kind of meaning to you. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I thought you might have been trying to say that the word doesn't have any meaning to me, so I'm like putting it on you to define. Like, to me, I know what I mean when I say bad. When I say bad, I just mean something that is against my preferences, right? But it sounded like you didn't like that kind of understanding of what the term means.
It's because it's not relevant. Actually, how you interpret and understand the things that you find good and bad is not relevant.
Sorry, the question. Let's say that again. The question of what?
The way in which you interpret the underlying reason as to why you find things good or bad is not actually relevant. There's no reason to bring it up.
I don't think I'm talking about the reasons that a given thing has the property of badness. I'm talking about what the property of badness, well, I mean, assuming it's a property, I'm talking about what
That's what I said. The underlying reason about why you have the view of good and bad that you do, which you've given, which is based on your preferences, is not relevant.
The reason why I have the view of good and bad that I have is not relevant. By have the view, do you mean like...
Yeah, I mean when you say that, for example, to me, anything is good is just what I prefer is it's going back to your preferences. I find things bad because they are bad with regard to what I
Yeah.
prefer.
So what's the thing that's irrelevant? Because the
That is
reason.
irrelevant. It's not relevant.
Oh, the reason that I think that it's relevant for this reason. So I just wanted to clear up that to me the word does have a meaning. I'm not sitting here with like no meaning attached to the sound bad, right? I just wanted to clear that up. That was the relevance of it.
Okay, that's fine, but
Yeah.
it's not relevant.
Okay, I think that's relevant. Maybe we mean
The,
different
the
things by
meaning
relevant.
the meaning is functionally relevant, but that true meaning is never going to be reducible to the meaning that you give form to.
Okay, the relevance of me explaining.
There's a discontinuity between the functional meaning and, let's say, the prescriptive meaning, or the functional meaning and the meaning you derive by means of thought. There's a difference between those two.
Okay, but wait a sec. Before we talk about different types of meaning, okay, so the reason that I brought up what I mean by bad is just to show that I have a concept of bad. Like the word has meaning to me. So that's relevant if your criticism is taken to be something like you don't have a concept of bad.
That was not my criticism at
And
all.
that okay, and that's fine. Now I thought that you might have been trying to say something kind of like that. When it sounded like you were saying there's this like ordinary language understanding we all have. If you don't have that, like I don't know. So if that's not what you're saying, that's fine. But I do have a concept of badness. Okay, so let's try to go back to the problem. So the problem is that what you want to discuss is this proposition that, contrary to what vegans say, they're bad people. But I don't actually know how to interpret that proposition because I'm not sure what you mean when you say bad. Like, you see the problem, right? It's just, this is always going to be a standstill. It doesn't matter what the term is, but if ever you're like, look, here's this proposition, and then you use some term the other guy doesn't
The
know.
reason the reason I paused was because I was muted and I accidentally
Oh,
clicked a YouTube video.
sorry.
No, I don't see a problem whatsoever. Because again, the content of bad, I don't need to tell you what I think is bad. The content of good and bad should be suspended in the argument themselves. And as a matter of fact, if good and bad are not actively suspended in a collective and common discursive sphere, then the meaning of these words could not possibly have any function, real life function. They're like, we could not possibly ever use these words without prefacing and clarifying, like, without trying to premise their content beforehand. And that's obviously not how we engage in the use of language as human beings.
I guess I just don't understand, like, I guess I don't understand what the point is you're trying to make. Like, the point that you came in with originally, as far as I understand, is contrary to what vegans say, they're bad people. Originally, it was just vegans are bad people, but whatever. Now I'm saying I don't understand what you mean when you're saying that because I don't know what you mean by bad. And
I don't think that's why. I think maybe you don't understand why I'm saying that, because you don't know why I'm ascribing vegans with the quality of badness. It's not that you don't know what I mean by bad. It's that you probably just don't know why I'm saying vegans are bad people.
no, I don't know what you mean when you use the word bad. If I knew
No,
what,
I think you do. I think you do. I think
okay.
if you're in front of I think if you're engaging in a conversation with someone and they say, "Hey, that guy's a bad person," I think you know what they mean.
Well, if it doesn't mean, see, I when I use those words, I take them to refer to my preferences, and there's different theories about what public language is like, right? And like, I don't know all the details here, but there's views like, you know, like subjectivism, where their moral statements are like truth apt, like
Okay,
propositions.
let's
about,
walk it back.
okay, but I
You're
feel
in a
like
room.
wait a second. No, sorry, just please. I need to like get my thoughts across. So I'm trying to go to square one here. You want to say vegans, despite what they say, are bad. I'm telling you that I can't evaluate the claim because I don't know what you mean by the word
Sure.
bad.
So,
Yeah.
just a question. You're in a room with someone, and he points to a guy and say, "That guy's a bad person." You don't know what he means.
Um, I could venture a guess. He might be expressing a preference against, like, he might be
No,
saying he
but
doesn't
you wouldn't
like
be,
that
if
person.
functionally speaking, you don't know what he means. You can't engage with that whatsoever.
Well, yeah, so I'm basically agnostic about like public moral language. Like, I understand the different ways that it might be cashed out, right? Like, maybe he's like a
Okay,
non.
hold on. You could be agnostic about it, but functionally speaking, I can almost guarantee that you're going to act in such a way that you know what he's talking about. I think that's one of the big problems here that this is hinging on goes back to the Heidegger Carnap dispute, right? Basically, you're kind of like Carnap, you're mistaking truth with certainty. You may not be you're saying you're agnostic because obviously you can't be certain about the meaning, but functionally speaking, there is a meaning. There is a functional meaning that you do know. Knowledge and certainty are not actually the same thing.
I don't think I've argued that. I don't think I've even invoked terms like knowledge or certainty.
Sure, but I asked you a simple question. You're in a room with a guy. He said that guy's a bad person. You said I'm agnostic about moral language, but functionally speaking, you couldn't possibly be an agnostic, and human beings couldn't possibly be fucking agnostic. Otherwise, they would not function as though they were, believers. They wouldn't function as, like, you say you're agnostic, but in practice you wouldn't be a fucking agnostic. You would actually act and communicate with that person as though you know what they were talking about. And if you're incapable of that, then you must live in a computer and you live on Discord. You don't actually live in the real human world.
Sorry, I'm just laughing a little at some of the philosophy people in text. Yeah, well, yeah. So what's? Let me just remember what we're talking about. We're talking about meaning, bad. Oh, yeah. Well, no. I mean, if I'm having like a commonplace, like mundane sort of conversation with someone, and they say they think something's bad, like I'm probably going to interpret that something like they have a preference against it, right? But you've kind of said you don't mean something like that. And I should add, to just to be careful here, like I don't have a view about public moral language. So like it could be that it's like non-cognitive. It could be that it's like error theoretic, like people are, when they make moral statements, they're referring to like,
Do you live in the computer?
please come on. Like an interruption is fine, but it's not like, it's not even, that wasn't even like, come on. Okay, so it could be error theoretic, like maybe they're referring to, like spooky kind of moral properties, and those properties actually don't exist. It could be, yeah, I don't know if I said non-cognitivist, like maybe they're just kind of, expressing some non-cognitive mental state when they deliver moral propositions, or maybe it's actually a combination, obviously not of like incompatible views at the same time, but maybe some statements are non-cognitive, some are like error theoretic. So when it comes to like a mundane conversation, it's like, no, I don't really, if you really ask me, do I know what they're saying? It's like, no, I think there's different, like, people in philosophy like argue about that, and there's different ideas about what might be going on there. But when you talk about like functionally, you must have some kind of idea. Like you're saying, like I still manage to have those conversations, and if someone's like, that's bad what that guy's doing when he's kicking a dog, like I understand, like, maybe I should go like stop him from kicking the dog or something. Like I can like function in society with my understanding, whatever it is, right? But yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean that I have any. So I guess this is what I want to say. It's kind of twofold. It's like, first of all, that doesn't mean I actually have like clarity. Well, I guess this is what I want to say. I don't have clarity about what exactly that language means, but I kind of interpret it just like they're expressing like a preference against this thing, because like that interpretation seems to like get the right results a lot of the time, even if maybe it turns out I'm not understanding them. It's like, if they say, like this food is bad, and I interpret it as they have a preference against it, and I don't buy them that food anymore or make it anymore, it's like, it's probably going to have the right kind of outcomes. So no, I don't have a view about exactly what that language means, but I kind of interpret it in that way, and that seems to like get me by.
Yeah, so we could have actually, if you would have let me interrupt you, we could have actually, made this a lot faster, because basically the distinction you're working with here is that you are not certain about what they mean, but you still have a functional meaning of what they're saying. Now you can say that, well, ultimately the reason why I will assent to interacting like a normal human being and act as though I know what he's talking about is because secretly, or not secretly, but in my head somewhere, I have some kind of idea that he means preference. Well, maybe that's true, or maybe, which is what I believe, this is just what you tell yourself when you look at the matter from an intellectual perspective, because maybe it kind of poses some kind of inconsistency or contradiction to your intellectual belief. But how you interact in society and the way you interpret that intellectually are two completely different things.
Well, I'm not sure how much of that bears on like the core kind of point. Like the point is just that I'm not sure what you're saying. If
I'm saying in order to understand the meaning of what someone says when they say good or bad, you don't actually have to draw out a philosophical concept of good or bad.
I need to have enough clarity that I know what they're talking about, though. Right? And I offered up my
And
concept.
and the qualifications for clarity, it seems like you're saying the qualifications for that clarity is defining good or bad in some kind of abstract way, but in
No,
practice,
no.
functionally
Wait,
speaking,
there's a
okay,
slight
then what is the qualifications for clarity? Go ahead.
Well, wait, just one second. When you said that I require a definition, it's like definitions are nice. We use them for a reason. They quickly convey things. But if for some reason a term is not definable, like maybe it's like semantically primitive, or there's some other kind of problem that makes definition like hard or whatever, like I'm open to having the meaning conveyed in other ways, but it's just like at the end of the day the meaning needs to get in my head for me to evaluate a proposition containing that word.
So let me actually be clear about my position, just so we can speed this up, because I just want to speed
Sure.
this up. You're saying, I wonder what Haas means when he says bad. Does he just mean something that he personally doesn't prefer? Well, I'll tell you what Haas means. Haas means by good or bad, he is assuming that good or bad are words whose meaning is suspended at a collective and social and common discursive level. Um, and that he is referring to something almost he is referring to something external just from himself and his own preferences. There is good and there is bad. It's not a matter of my personal preference. It's about things out there.
Yeah, so you're talking about some kind of like realism about morality, right?
uh well, to play the devil's advocate, what a kind of transcendentalist view of like morality is socially and historically defined or collectively defined. Is that necessarily a form of moral realism? I don't know. Moral realism sounds a little bit metaphysically loaded to me, you know?
Okay, well, I'm not trying to load anything. Um, I guess I'm not entirely sure then. If you weren't talking about some kind of moral realism, I'm not entirely sure what you're getting at there when you're sort of spelling out what you mean when you use moral language.
I believe good and this is look, for me to say I believe good and bad refer to something real.
Mm-hmm.
By real, we could also be referring to just some kind of common social um, and collective, whatever meaning.
Um, refer. Well, it's weird to say it refers to a meaning. It's like the meaning refers to. Well, okay, well, whatever. Anyway, like when I guess like can you maybe I missed it, but can you kind of like spell out what you mean when you use terms like good or bad?
Yeah, it seems like we're looping. Like this is a kind of like dialogue tree, and we're just kind of looping.
Yeah, so
Like,
I will say
isn't this how we started out this entire fucking dialogue tree? We started out by you saying, "Can you give me an idea of what you mean by good or bad?" I really already demonstrated to you why that's a nonsensical question.
so it's I try not to bite on things like, when people throw out like stuff like, oh, dialogue tree or whatever, but like I just got to point out like I fully reject the position that there's a problem with dialogue trees. I don't actually happen to have a pre-constructed dialogue tree on this topic, but yeah, I don't understand the distinction between a dialogue tree and just like a well thought out position. And I think people who,
Yeah, I'll explain to you the problem with one.
But wait a second. Wait, no, that's going to cascade off. I want to deal with what you said. So I'm just pointing out I don't even accept that dialogue trees are a bad thing, and I actually don't have one on this topic. But yeah, I think that we are still at the first part of this conversation because I've been hung up on the same thing from the start. And like, I don't say this to be rude, but it just seems like you don't have an answer, and that's fine. But if at any point you get clarity on your moral semantic and you want to like follow up and continue the conversation, explain what you mean, and then we can evaluate that proposition. About
So you're trying to run away now?
No, I'm happy to keep talking, but can I just complete my sentence? So I was just going to say, yes, I do think we're looping. And the reason I was just speaking as if the conversation was ending was because I actually took it when you said that you wanted to end the conversation. I'm happy to keep going.
No.
But just let me finish. So I agree that there's a loop. And the loop is because I don't understand what you mean by bad. And for me, that's going to be a hang up. So it's basically like, if you can spell out what you mean, we can keep going. But if not, it's going to kind of keep being the same like loop. Or we can go to some other topic or something.
Here's the issue, and I'm going to tell you the issue with the loop in this context. The issue with the loop here is that I have provided you with a new argument, which you haven't responded to. You've just returned to your original question without addressing the wealth of argumentation I provided to you about why your question cannot actually be answered.
Okay, so now just to be clear, originally I was just trying to understand what the claim is to even understand if we disagree about it, and I was seeking clarity on your like moral semantics so that I could do that. But if you want to say like just forget about that claim, I just have some argument I want to run. I didn't actually catch the argument. I might not have been listening at the right time. But if you have an argument that you want to deliver, like
sure. The argument is that the good and bad, the content of good and bad cannot be prescriptively conveyed in terms of by kind of definitions or by some kind of abstract axiomatic system. Good and bad, their content is suspended by their actual the way in which people actively relate to these words in reality, which draws upon a host of intuitions, common, unconscious, and functional, practical associations, and so on and so on.
Okay, I guess, sorry if I'm a bit stuck. I might not be keeping up here, but so I understand we're now dropping the claim about vegans are bad, or despite what they say.
Absolutely not. Vegans are terrible people. That's my position.
No, by dropping it, I don't mean that you're saying the claim that you've changed your position on. I mean, that's not the subject of conversation anymore. That's what I mean by dropping it. You want to talk about a different argument, right?
No, my argument is that vegans are bad people.
Okay, and what do you mean when you say bad?
Oh, okay. What I mean when I say bad is that they're bad people.
Okay, but defining bad in terms of itself isn't going to provide clarity to someone who doesn't know what the word means, right? If I say, what's a head?
If you don't know what bad means,
a head is a head. It's like if someone doesn't know what the word means.
If you don't know what bad means, I don't know how I can help you.
Yeah, so I guess that what I would say at that point is kind of like what I was saying a minute ago, which is like, that's okay. Like, it's a problem on it's kind of a problem on your view if you're not able to communicate what you mean.
No, it's not, because
can I just finish? Like, if you think that it's difficult to communicate,
you're wasting time.
Okay, well, just let me say what I want to say. If you think that it's difficult to communicate what you mean when you use moral language, like I can be really charitable and say like, yeah, maybe like you just have a view that's really nuanced and it's actually like legitimately a difficult task. Like, that's possible, right? So that's fine if you want to say that, but what that means is just that we're going to be at a conversational impasse when you invoke moral terminology, and if you want to get past that impasse, you need to find some way, whether it's creating.
I don't think you know what morality is.
You need to find some way, whether it's providing a definition, whether it's doing an interpretive dance, I don't care, but some way to get the term into my head, or else, yeah, we're stuck.
Well, I don't think you know what morality actually is. I think you have a really warped view of morality, as though morality rests upon abstract axioms. That's ethics. Morality is a category of aesthetics. Morality is not something that can be conveyed at the level of abstract definitions.
Yeah, so you're right that when you say I don't know what morality is, obviously you're talking about what you mean by morality, and that's right. I don't know what you mean.
Like when people say this thing is good or this thing is bad, it's because they're relying upon a common intuitive understanding that there is good and there is bad. It's content being suspended in reality itself.
Yeah, I think that people have a commonplace notion, but I think that the commonplace notion is ambiguous. I think that philosophers have different views about what's going on there. Is it non-cognitive?
Philosophers do, yes.
Yeah, is it non-cognitive? Is it error theoretic? Is it subjectivist? How exactly are we using that kind of moral language? So I guess we have that language there, and I'm not entirely sure how that language cashes out. I don't know.
Well, since you're incapable of debating, there's a guy named DE who's just bragging about how stupid he is. So I'd love for him to get in the VC and maybe he'll debate.
Yeah, I'm happy to pass it to Josh. He's a good debater. He knows a lot of philosophy,
Yeah.
but
You
before...
are fucking.
Okay.
Oh my god.
I don't even know what he's on about today.
Yeah. So I've seen you've conceded the debate, so that's okay.
Well, wait, so did you say I have or he has conceded the debate?
No, you have.
I don't think that I've changed my view on any proposition.
I've explained to you why. When you ask me the question, what is good or what is bad, it's a meaningless question. It's not only a question that can't be answered, it's actually a meaningless question.
Why can't it be? Well, okay, wait. So there's two problems there. So you're saying the question is meaningless and you're saying it can't be answered. So let's start with can't be answered. Why?
Well, I've already explained to you why it can't be answered, because good and bad.
Well, just for clarity, when you say
the content of good and bad is not actually premised by abstract, axiomatic type of thinking, and the content of good and bad is suspended in reality itself. So when you ask me what that is, it can't be answered, because in order for me to properly convey to you the real meaning of good or bad, I have to introduce you to a world, right, in some kind of way, that it has to be outside of this VC. I have to raise you as an infant and expose you to society and expose you to some kind of deeper intuitive unconscious learning that cannot be performed in a Discord call. Effectively, what you're asking me is it'd be like you're asking me to cure you of a mental illness. I can't do that in a Discord VC. How can I cure you of your mental illness here?
Okay, so I feel like we should largely be able to agree here. The reason that we can't discuss the proposition, despite what they say vegans are bad people, is because we don't share a meaning. We don't share understanding of what the term bad actually means. And further... No,
I think we do, and you're lying about it.
Oh, okay. And can you actually? I guess.
No, I think most people can see you're just trying to avoid the debate because you're scared to debate about it. You're just lying. That you're hiding behind what is your concept of? You know what I mean when I say they're bad people. You mean I'm trying to say they ain't shit. They terrible people. They're bad people. It's very clear. You're really lying here, and that's okay. I'm happy to move on to someone who will actually debate me if you won't.
Yeah, you should debate
so
D.
I think. Well, I'm happy to let him
I can
debate.
you.
Sorry, guys, come on, please stop. I'm happy to let him talk to Josh after, but what I don't want is a suggestion that I'm not willing to debate, right? I'm happy to debate.
No, that's self-evident. You've already demonstrated you're not willing to debate. You've demonstrated that to everyone.
I'm here right now, right? And I think that
you're here, but you're not debating. You're just running a loop because you don't actually want to debate about anything.
Well, I don't think you know the contents of my mind, but I think that's beside the point.
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty clear to everyone.
Okay, but in terms of whether you can actually deal intellectually with the things I've said, can you basically can we agree on the following? First of all, we agree that we can't have the conversation about whether
because you don't want to.
Well, no, because we don't share an understanding of the term.
No, we do share an understanding.
So, okay, so basically your position is just that you think that I'm lying. And let's just for a second. set aside the question of whether I'm lying, because that's beside the point, right? Say that there is some person who doesn't know what you mean, okay, and say that they gave the same kind of criticism. Do you have a response to this person or not?
I would assume they are not raised in a human society, and I can't actually have any
No,
meaningful
say
discussion
that they
with
are.
them.
Say that they are.
Then they would. They would
Okay,
know what I
so
mean.
wait, when you say
I would
then,
assume they're lying. I would assume they're lying then.
okay, is it necessary that they be lying?
Yes.
Okay, and what's the contradiction if they don't lie?
Contradiction with regard to what?
When you say it's necessary, I take that to mean logically necessary, as in if it weren't the case, there would be a contradiction.
No, it's not just logically necessary.
Oh,
it
then
is.
I don't know what you even mean when you
It
say
is
necessary.
actually necessary. It is actually necessary
Necessary for what?
for reality to be consistent.
What does it mean to say necessary? Wait, for reality to be consistent? Yeah, right. That's logical necessity, right? So
No,
what's the
logical necessity is not the same as a kind of metaphysical necessity. It's not the same thing.
Oh, so you think it's metaphysically necessary that anyone who's raised in society will know what you mean when you utter the word bad, right?
Yeah.
So are you saying that you think that there's some metaphysical law that's violated if the proposition this person was raised in society and doesn't know what you mean by bad is true?
I didn't forward any metaphysical laws.
Okay.
I don't know why you
then,
think metaphysics is a series of laws.
Well, when you say metaphysically necessary, I'm not sure. I could interpret it as meaning that if this thing weren't...
Wait, do you know what metaphysics refers to?
Just one second, please.
You don't, do you?
Sorry, come on. So when you say metaphysically necessary, I could take it that you mean that if this thing were not true, some kind of metaphysical law would be violated. But if you don't mean something like that, I guess I'm not even really sure.
If it were not true, we would be living in a different reality. The reason I mentioned metaphysics is because it's not just inconsistent for the abstract sphere. Usually, when in philosophy, when they refer to metaphysics, they're referring to something that is some kind of attempt to describe reality outside of the bounds of concepts and outside of philosophy. So that's why I mentioned it's metaphysically necessary. If what you're saying was true, we would be living in a fundamentally different reality than the one we live in now.
I think you might be confusing the terms necessary and actual, right? Because when you say something's necessary, it means if it weren't the case, we'd be in a different reality. It just seems like you're saying that we wouldn't be in a
that's not true.
Like
if
actual,
it was,
right?
it's necessity does not strictly. There can be necessity for our reality to be consistent. For example.
Wait, that's different. Sorry, 1 second. There's two things you said. One of them is necessary for our reality to be consistent. That's logical necessity. The other is necessary.
No, it is not. No, it is fucking not.
Okay, you can talk about that in a sec. The other is necessary for the reality we're in to be the reality we're in, right? But that's just
what I
talking
mean.
about, sorry, yeah, but that's not really talking about what's necessary. That's just talking about what's actual. It's like if this weren't the case, we'd be talking about a reality that's not actual, right? You're just saying it's the case in reality. If this thing weren't the case, we'd be in a different reality. All you're saying is the thing is actual, right? And that's
No, I think the distinction is arbitrary.
1 second, and that's the okay, yeah. So that's the very proposition that I'm not convinced of, right? That this is the case in actual reality. So if by necessary you just end up meaning actual, you're just begging the question by restating the very claim I'm not convinced of. So that'll be a bad line of reasoning.
So I'm glad you finished your sentence. All you did was embarrass yourself and waste my time by doing it. But here's the thing. If that's what's begging the question, if my position is fundamentally that it would be a different reality, just for the sake of speeding this, even though your distinction between actuality and necessity is completely arbitrary and by no means philosophically uncontroversial, even if I were to grant you fucking that, why the fuck would you ask me, well, if this the contrary were to be true, what would be the contradiction? Why would you ask me that if I wasn't making pretense to logical consistency, but actual reality itself? Why would you even ask me that? You just fucking made a clown of yourself, dude.
Oh, well, obviously, because I thought you were talking about logical necessity. Like, why else would I ask you to show a contradiction? Like, was that supposed to be some kind of like own or something?
What do you mean? You thought I was talking about logical.
If your gotcha is to say, look, why would you ask me to show a contradiction if I'm not even talking about logical necessity? It's like, obviously the answer is because I thought you.
Why would you assume I'm talking about
necessity.
logical necessity? Why would you assume I was talking? What about what I said makes a reasonable person assume I was talking about logical necessity rather than reality?
Now, I'm not. I'd have to backtrack in the conversation to see if I actually assumed logical necessity or if I gave different options and then showed.
Fuck. Did you not just admit you assumed logical necessity?
Don't do that to me. 1 second. Now, I'd need to go back to see if I assumed logical necessity is what you meant, or if I gave a selection of different modalities and then talked about how the claim would kind of like act with respect to those different modalities, or what the burden would be for you. But granted that I did assume it, then that's fine. I didn't mean to, and I'm happy to understand necessity on your terms.
So can someone give me a clip, roll it back about 2 minutes? Didn't you just admit that the reason why you said what would be the contradiction is because you assumed I was talking about logical necessity?
Yes.
Didn't you just admit that you fucking did assume logical necessity? So what are you saying? You don't know. You'd have to backtrack. You know what you meant.
Wait. 1 second. 1 second. You're trying to trip me up, but I can unwind that whole thing. So I could say that it might be the case if we backtrack in the conversation, right? So the claim is I assumed what you meant is logical necessity, and you're trying to go, oh, you said you assumed it and you said you didn't assume it. There's a contradiction. But no, I'm just talking in different senses, right? Like, it could be, well, I'm making the claim, I was making the assumption, but it might be if you go back earlier in the conversation, I actually laid out different modalities, and I was talking about what would be true with respect to each of those modalities, right? So it might be that the assumption actually comes after saying, well, it's got to be one of these things. Here's what's true if it's this one, right? Now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I laid out the different modalities and then went into each of them, or if I just assumed logical necessity from the get-go. But I was assuming logical necessity while I was responding by asking you to spell out the contradiction. Okay, and now that that's cleared up, okay, so let's just try to... I don't remember where we left off before all of that. Oh yeah, right, necessity. You want to say it's necessarily the case that if someone was raised in society, they would understand what you mean by bad. But then we're trying to understand what you mean by necessary. So we know you don't mean logically necessary. And the other sense that you gave was that if it weren't the case, we'd be in a different reality. But that just means actual, right? So are you just saying actual when you say necessary?
So do you want to now debate about the distinction between actuality and necessity, and why the hard distinction you're drawing is not philosophically uncontroversial?
No, I just want to know what you mean when you say the word necessary, so that I can understand what I think of your claim that it's necessarily true that anyone who's raised in society will understand what you mean when you say bad.
Okay, no. Don't backpedal back to the bad thing, okay? When it comes to... Here, guys, just to show you how fucking ridiculous this is. This is how all of this started. Well, you asked me the question. If someone, such as yourself, asked me and was raised in our society, with all the, raised in our society, basically a normal human being, asked me, what do I mean by bad? Like, not in terms of developing the content of the accusation. Like, for example, if I say that guy on the street is bad, and they're like, oh, what do you mean? And it's not in the sense of like, oh, I will describe to you the bad things they were doing and now you'll understand it's bad, but actual, like, what do you mean by the use of the word bad? I would assume they are lying. You responded by saying, so if the contrary were the case, what would be the contradiction? Am I wrong?
I didn't follow the whole thing, but I can just say right at the outset, I don't remember if I launched into assuming it was logical necessity or laying out the different modalities and talking about what's true on each. But regardless of which of those is true, I'm happy to understand what you mean by the term. Is what you mean just the same thing as actual?
If I am saying that our use of the word good and bad is derived, for example, from society, being raised in a society, just for the sake of shortening this, then necessarily someone who is raised in a society has a sense of what good and bad are. And if they were to be asking me what is good or bad, they would be lying. And if someone were to be telling me that they don't have any meaning of good and bad, they would be lying. It is an inevitable consequence of growing up in a society that you will derive some kind of sense of good or bad. It's as simple as that.
Okay, so when you say, just to be clear, so are you still making, or have you moved away from the claim that if someone's raised in society, they'll understand what you mean when you say bad?
I think he fucked his mic again.
Yeah.
I'm sticking to that. I'm sticking to that.
Oh, I don't actually know what you said. You didn't have, like, your mic wasn't activated at all there.
I'm sticking to what I originally said. I'm not.
Yeah.
Originally...
Okay, cool. Yeah. Right. So then when you say it's necessary, does that just mean actual, or does it mean something other than that?
What? Sorry. Repeat the question.
Yeah, so your claim is that it's like a necessary truth that if someone is raised in society, they'll understand what you mean when you say bad. So I'm asking, when you say it's necessary, you don't mean logical necessity. And at one point you said it just means that if it weren't true, we'd be in another reality, which just means it's actual. So I'm asking...
Because I'm saying something about reality.
Yeah, so I'm asking if necessity just means actuality. Like, are they just the same thing when you use that word?
You can look at it from two perspectives. If we want to be logically consistent, then you can we can do it dual prongs, right? So from the perspective of logical consistency, if we just abstract the pure form of logic from the statement, growing up in society, assuming we accept this premise, you will derive a sense of good and bad. Therefore, if someone were to claim that they have no meaning of good and bad and that they require me to convey it to them while at the same time having grown up in society, they would be lying. So that is just logically true.
So
now, on the second prong, don't fucking interrupt me. The second prong, right, which is actually what we were talking about, is that because as a result of something I'm saying about reality itself, right, this, what I just described, this tree necessarily follows. And it necessarily follows not strictly as a matter of logic, but because of the nature of reality itself. Now, you claim that I am being obfuscatory because I'm not being clear about the distinction between actuality and necessity. But actually,
I didn't say that.
If you were to just, shut up. If you
misrepresentation. I didn't say that you're obfuscating.
But you're interrupting me. You talk so much, and you want to interrupt me.
Yeah, and you can interrupt me too if I misrepresent you. I did not say you're obfuscating.
No, but who's gonna decide who misrepresented too, huh? The neutral court is gonna describe. Shut the fuck up, dude. Let me continue.
You have too much gain when you yell. Unfortunately, I actually can't make out what you're saying. But I'm just clarifying. I didn't say you're obfuscating.
Okay, but you're trying to make it seem like I'm not being clear about what I'm saying, when in fact, even from the perspective of both prongs I just mentioned, I am very fucking clear about what I mean. So, and by the way, just this is what the audience is unfortunately experiencing. If you just were to fucking talk like a human being engaging in the ordinary use of language, it would be even more clear what I'm saying. Right? But you have to draw in and you have to draw out the fine details of the distinction between actuality and necessity and all of the different modalities, which is completely fucking pointless and unnecessary. This is why I'm accusing you of lying. You are trying to avoid actually debating me about the meat and potatoes content of what is under dispute or what can potentially be under dispute. You're a fucking sophist.
I'd actually
It's
really,
like
I'd actually really like to get to talking about the proposition. I just need to know what it means first. So when you say
you
that,
do know what it means, but you do know what it means. You're
yeah,
just lying about. You're
that's
not.
just
You're just lying about it because you consciously refuse to accept any communication that does not conform to the arbitrary parameters of meaning you invented. Not the parameters of meaning that actually function in reality, but the ones you pulled out of your ass and you created from thin air.
yeah. So I guess that what I'm not going to do is argue with you about whether I'm lying or not, but posit a hypothetical agent who isn't lying and ask how you'd respond to them. And if your response is to say it's impossible for them
Same
to be,
thing. I would tell them the same thing I told you.
well, wait, no, but the thing you should be telling me is that an agent like that isn't possible because it's necessarily the case that they would know what what is meant by
Oh
that,
no, yeah.
right?
You're saying if the agent was, assuming the agent wasn't lying, obviously that's not possible.
Okay,
I don't know
right,
why you would even
right.
bring that up.
Okay, right. No, to get to this, right? So now when you say it's not possible or when you say it's necessary, right? Those are claims that, can be cashed out in different ways. Philosophers talk about modalities, right? Are we talking about a logical modality, a physical modality, a metaphysical modality? So I'm trying to understand when you say it's necessarily the case that if someone's raised in society, they'll understand what you mean by bad, or the same claim in a different way, it's impossible for them to be raised in society and not know what you mean by the word bad. I'm just trying to understand what modality you're speaking within, right? Now you said
Why?
you're not talking about a logical modality.
Why are you asking that?
Because I don't really understand what the claim that it's necessary means.
You don't understand what I mean when I forward the claim, whether you accept or reject it, that a person raised in our society will have a sense of what good and bad is. You don't understand what I mean when I say that.
Well, the exact claim that I'm talking about was the claim that it's necessarily the case that if an agent is raised in society, they'll know what you mean by bad.
I am saying they will have a sense of what good and bad refer to.
I was under so just to be clear, this is not
the specific content of what I mean by bad is something, if it's derived from society itself, then we share the source. Now, my the content that I ascribe to good and I ascribe to bad may be different from that person, but that is only something that could be developed by some kind of mutual communication and interaction. It's not, the claim is very clear. Some sense of good and bad inevitably follows from being raised in a society. That's a very clear claim. There is no need to interrogate the different modalities of its necessity.
Okay, so just to be clear, the claim that I was fixated on is the claim it's necessarily the case that if a person is raised in society, they'll know what you mean by bad. Is that a claim that you defend or no?
Repeat that. What did you say?
Yeah, if a person is raised in society, then they'll know then it's a necessary truth that they'll know what you mean by bad.
Yeah.
Okay, right. And now I want to understand what you mean by necessary, right? Because if you want it, so we both understand it's not logically necessary, clearly, but I don't understand how I guess I don't know what modality it would be necessary with.
Wait. It's necessary in all modalities, every single one.
That includes logical necessity, which you've said it isn't the case it's logically necessary. So that's actually your first contradiction in this discussion. That is you contradicting yourself.
No, it's not actually, because I already told you that even if I were to entertain it from the perspective of logical necessity, which I wasn't, and that was my argument. I was not making claims about logical necessity. I was talking about reality. But from the perspective of logical necessity, I'm also correct. So no, there's no contradiction. You failed to demonstrate one.
Yeah, so I can just spell out the contradiction pretty straightforwardly. So if we say, for all x, if x is a modality, then it's necessarily true under that modality that phi, where phi is your claim, right? Then we say logical necessity is a modality under which it's not the case that phi, right? That's just going to be a contradiction, right? You could like spell it out.
Okay, so roll the clip back. Did I say that what I said was not logically necessary? Is that what I said?
Yes, yeah, you'd said that a few times.
No, I
earlier.
did not. I said I wasn't referring to logical necessity.
Oh,
when I originally made the argument.
That's fair. So it's possible that actually what you said was just that you weren't referring to logical necessity.
Yes.
Wait, please stop. Not that it's actually not the case that it's logically necessary. So if in fact that's true, then you're right that there wouldn't be a contradiction.
I know I'm fucking right, dude. You're just wasting time. I know I'm fucking right.
Now take
the L. You just contradicted yourself.
What's the contradiction?
You made a claim that I was being inconsistent and I was contradicting myself, and it looks like you got fucked now, and you can't say that anymore.
Yeah, under my prior interpretation of what you meant.
Which was fucking wrong and unwarranted, and you can't justify that interpretation.
I don't
because you made too many fucking claims. You fucking assume.
Let me respond. I don't think it's unwarranted because it's a very subtle distinction. The distinction between.
No, it's not because I never said it's not logically necessary. I never said that.
Please. It's a subtle distinction between saying something is I'm not referring to logical necessity and something isn't logically necessary, right?
There was no content justified you coming to the conclusion.
Sorry. That's subtle enough that I don't think it's fair of you to say, you know, anything along the lines of like, oh, it's unwarranted, or if you think it's like bad faith or something. It's just a completely reasonable misinterpretation.
It's not reasonable at all. You overstepped.
Okay. Well,
you overstepped in your interpretation. Okay. I never said it wasn't logically. It's not logically necessary.
Okay.
I never said that.
That's right. Okay. Well, I don't know if it's right, but it's very possibly right. And if it is right, that's perfectly fine. That's a subtle distinction, the distinction between X isn't logically necessary and I'm not referring to logical necessity when I talk about X. But that's fine. If you meant the latter and I accidentally interpreted you as the former, then I'm not going to say it's a contradiction. That's okay. But I will say that if you're saying it's logically necessary, now I am going to ask you what contradiction is entailed by the proposition that, you know, X is raised.
Yeah, I'll explain it. Well, because I already did.
Let's just make sure the
yeah, I already explained it, but I can do it again since you're an
let's just make sure it's clear. Okay, what am I?
Yeah. If we assume premise A.
Before you spell out I just want it to be clear what I'm asking for, right? Like, what I'm asking for is the contradiction that's entailed by the proposition that some person was raised in society and doesn't know what you mean by bad.
Sure.
Okay.
If we assume the premise that a person raised in society derives their sense of what good and bad is, will necessarily have a sense of what good and bad is. And someone claims that they don't know what I mean when I say bad. The contradiction lies in the fact that they actually have a sense of what the use of the word good and bad is. That's the contradiction.
So
they have a sense of what the word means, and yet they claim they don't know what I mean when I say it.
Okay, so the contradiction is that they know what the word means, and it's not the case that they know what the word means?
Sure.
Okay, and so the proposition that they don't know what the word means, that was baked into the hypothetical, right? Because we said, you know, picture an agent who doesn't know what the word means but was raised in society. But then the other half of the contradiction, which is that they do know what it means, where are you getting that from?
They were raised. So your question is, what would be inconsistent about the fact of them being raised in society and yet not knowing what it means?
Yeah, what you mean when you say bad.
That's right. The premise, the logical inconsistency lies in the fact that despite being raised in society and thus deriving a sense of the meaning of good and bad, they still don't know what it means.
Wait, So I understand that you think the contradiction is that they know what the word means and they don't know what the word means, right? And I agree on half of the contradiction, right? I agree that they don't know what the word means because that's baked into the hypothetical. But then the other half, that they know what the word means, I don't see where you're getting that. Are you saying that it's just some like, well, yeah, like how do you get to that?
You asked where the contradiction was. I gave you the contradiction.
No, so I asked what the contradiction was, and you pointed out what the contradiction was. That's fine. Although technically, the way you said it, it wasn't actually a contradiction. But I like
Why?
just because for it to be a contradiction, it needs to be something that if you like put it into a formal system like first order logic or propositional logic, you want it to actually, for instance, if it's in propositional logic, generate a truth table that's false under all interpretations of the variables in the statement. So technically that wouldn't...
That's not true. That's not true. That's a very narrow view of what contradiction means. That's a dogma of analytic philosophy. It's not actually... That doesn't premise the use of the word contradiction across the history of humanity before people gave a shit about analytic philosophy in the fucking 20th century. Please shove your truth tables up your fucking ass.
Yeah, so if you mean something else by contradiction, I'm happy to hear what it means. But I take a contradiction to be a statement...
Yeah, because you're a computer.
Yeah, I take contradiction to be a statement that's going to either directly be...
You live in the computer.
Sorry, I take contradiction to be a statement that's going to either directly be or entail a statement of the form P and not P. And that's a pretty standard understanding.
Yeah, and suck my pee-pee.
Okay, well, I mean, that's just the standard kind of way that you'd be, taught.
Okay, I don't know what the PP who, the PP this. Is it relevant to the conversation? No, it's fucking not.
Yeah, so the relevance was that I said technically it's not a contradiction how you presented it, and you asked why that's the case, so I was just explaining why. That's the relevance. But yeah, so I don't mind though, so I rephrased it just slightly so it is a contradiction, and you seem to still sign off on it.
So you're asking me you want a truth table?
No.
That's your new fucking goalpost. You want me to give you a truth table? I gave you a fucking contradiction, and now you're saying you want a truth table.
No, I didn't ask you for a truth table. I talked about what a contradiction is with respect to truth tables.
So what do you want from me? When you ask me where's the contradiction, what would suffice to qualify as a contradiction that I can give you?
No, I'm happy with what you gave, right? You gave something in natural language.
Okay, so what's the problem?
Can I please just get through some sentences
here? Go ahead.
Okay? Yeah, so, all right, so the contradiction, right. So I just point out that, like, technically what you gave wasn't a contradiction, but it was obvious what you were getting at, right? And the thing you're getting at is a contradiction. So if we take it that you mean something like that they know what the word means and they don't know what the word means, of course that's a contradiction. Now I'm no longer asking the same question, what is the contradiction, because now I know what the contradiction is. I'm saying, okay, the contradiction has two parts, P, then a conjunction, and not P, right? So I can agree that P is true because it's part of the hypothetical, right? The hypothetical gives a case where there is some agent who's raised in society and doesn't know what a word means. So we can get, just by simplification, by the rule of simplification on that proposition, we can get the proposition that they don't know what the word means. But then the other half of the contradiction, the not P, that they do know what the word means, I'm asking where that comes from. So we're one question further. It's not what is the contradiction, it's I agree about the first half. Now how do you get the other half of the contradiction? And you're muted if you're talking. Can the others hear me? Like,
if you're raised in a society, you have a sense of what good and bad mean. That's the premise.
Okay, now say that I challenge that premise, right? So say that your response when
you challenge that premise because it seems like you're trying to directly contradict the premise.
Wait, just 1 second. So let's just follow the like kind of sequence of like steps. So the first step is what's the contradiction? The contradiction is they know what the word means or the word bad means and they don't know what it means. Okay, how do you get that they know what it means? And then you're going to give some argument that involves the proposition that if they're raised in a society...
premise. It's a dogmatic premise in this context.
Oh, okay. So if I don't accept that, you don't have any like argument to persuade me of
it? My premise was that if you are raised in a society, it necessarily follows that you have a sense of what good and bad are. That was the premise of the entire fucking thing.
Now, just keep in mind, we're talking about understanding what you mean by good and bad, right?
Okay, but that was the premise I forwarded.
Okay. Now, when you say if someone's raised in society, they know what you mean by good or bad, right? That's very close to forming a complete circle, because that's just the word necessity away from being the original proposition that they necessarily know what you mean, right? So we've gotten back to the original proposition just without the word necessary in it. So why would I accept, right? If you're giving an argument for the second component of that contradiction that starts from a proposition that if someone's raised in society, then they know what you mean by bad, right? Obviously, I'm just going to ask, why would I accept that premise?
That's what you should have asked from the very fucking beginning instead of wasting my
No,
time.
it's not, because what you started with was a slightly different claim. Which
Do
is
you
that,
know
which
how long I fucking dedicated my time to explain to you my argument about why?
1 second. The original claim had the word necessary in it, right? So I'm going to have a slightly different kind of thing to say when it has the word necessary. We've ended up at a similar claim that doesn't contain that word, so I'm asking...
No, wait. No, I am containing that word, necessary. It necessarily follows. The distinction you draw between necessity and actuality is arbitrary.
Okay, right. So then we've actually... Wait a second. If when I ask you what the contradiction... How you get that second half of the contradiction, that they know what the word means. If you appeal to the proposition that it's a necessary truth that if they're raised in society, they know what it means, that is full circle. That's circular reasoning. You're begging the question.
Let me explain something to you very clear. You're trying to confuse everyone, so let me clarify it to my audience too.
No, Haz, what I want...
Shut up.
I just made a point and I want you to respond to it. Do you understand?
Yeah. Shut up.
Wait.
So
No.
You
have to actually deal with what I said to you, right? Do you... Sorry, Haz, just 1 second. Do you understand that under those conditions, do you understand that what I just described is circular reasoning?
I'm not going to respond to your fucking question. You literally are wasting my time, and I'm here to actually get us back to the fucking point.
All right, so I just want
to... It's not circular reasoning. No, it's not. It's not.
Okay, so let me explain. Let me point out.
No, because you're misinterpreting what I fucking said. So what? You're just gonna keep talking? I can't respond, you fucking pussy? So why don't you fucking debate me?
Wait a second.
Why don't you fucking debate me? You just want to go off on a tangent about why you're right?
Wait a second.
It's not circular reasoning. Your fucking question is loaded. It's a loaded question.
Just wait a second.
Because you're misinterpreting what I was saying originally.
Wait a second.
What I was saying originally, the reason I was saying it was logically necessary is because if we accept the premise, it is logically necessary.
Wait a second.
That's what I assumed you meant.
Wait a second. Okay, so I want to understand if, right, I'm not saying this is what you said. I'm saying you understand that if someone gave that reasoning, right, the reasoning that I just described, that would be circular reasoning, right?
The reason for the premise, or the reason why the premise, if we assume the premise, then what I stated logically follows. You're talking about two different fucking things.
No. This is what I'm talking about, and I want you to affirm that this is circular reasoning. Whether this is what you're doing is a separate question, okay? Now, if someone makes the claim that it's a necessary truth that if someone's raised in society, they'll understand what I mean by bad. You ask what the contradiction is, and they say it's that they know what the word means and they don't know what it means. And you say, oh, okay, so what's the argument that they know what the word means? And then you say, oh, well, that argument starts from the premise that it's a necessary truth that if they're raised in society, they know what the word means. That's the conclusion at the very end of all the argument showing up in the premises. That is just what circular reasoning is. It's definitional. So
yeah, well, that's because you obfuscated what I actually was referring to.
Yeah,
so there's two, like I said, there's two different things.
Don't try to dodge. Whether that's what you did is a separate question. You understand what I just described. If that's what you did, that's circular reasoning, right?
Yeah, but listen, here's the thing. There's two different things you're working with here. Okay, let me explain this to you very carefully and cautiously for you, so your robotic self can comprehend what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
There's different elements to so you begin with the premise. If you are raised in a society, it follows you will have a sense of what good and bad is. Then it follows that if someone tells me, right, that they don't know what I mean, it is necessarily the case that they are lying. Now, in terms of that being logically necessary, I've demonstrated why it's logically necessary. What you're talking about is whether the premise, by being raised in a society, it necessarily follows that you will derive a sense of good and bad. You're asking if that is true by some kind of deductive or logical necessity. Those are two completely different questions. It's not the same question you're asking. Those are two entirely different questions. You see why I wanted to fucking interrupt you? Because you're wasting my fucking time. I could have just told you this and we would have saved ourselves this time. You are asking two entirely different questions when you ask that. Now, obviously, yes, by logical necessity, someone would be lying because they do have a sense of what good and bad is. But if you're asking the question of why would they necessarily have a sense of good and bad, I don't think that is something that is purely deduced but from logicalness. Of course is that. I've elaborated the argument as to why pretty thoroughly beforehand, which is the fact that good and bad are not premised and do not derive from absolute. Remember that argument I gave you. So obviously the reason I said, then you said, well, if it's necessarily true, is that because it's logically necessary alone? No, because I'm making an argument about reality. And then you said, no, if you're making an argument about reality, then you're talking about actuality. I reject the arbitrary distinction you're drawing between necessity and actuality.
It sounds like
what is actual is also necessary, in my view, according to my philosophical perspective.
Okay, it sounds... And I'm not sure exactly how we got back to actual versus necessary, but what I want to understand is we agree that that kind of reasoning would be circular. Now, I just want to make sure that's not the kind of reasoning that you're giving, right? So let's just kind of go through the reasoning process, and you tell me when I get the chain wrong, okay? So the claim starts... the reasoning process starts with the claim, right? We have, it's a necessary truth that if someone's raised in society, they know what you mean by bad. I ask you, and you clarify that you think that's logically necessary. I ask you what contradiction is entailed by it being the case that someone's raised in society and doesn't know what you mean, and you say the contradiction is...
I did not say... hold on, I'm stopping you now. My mic was muted. You fucked up when you said it is a necessary truth.
Okay.
What I actually said is that if someone is raised in a society, they will necessarily derive a sense of good and bad. That is different from saying that statement taken as a whole is a necessary truth. Because if I say it's a necessary truth to you, that implies that I'm premising the necessity of accepting this truth on the basis of some kind of logical consistency or some other kind of modality you were talking about. I wasn't actually saying, right? Oh, did I use the word actually wrong? I wasn't actually saying that you have to accept this by some kind of logical necessity. That's not what I said. I just forwarded the argument. Now, whether you accept it or not, I'm willing to debate you about it, but I didn't say by virtue of some kind of axiomatic, abstract, or logical necessity, you have to accept the premise. It's as simple as that. You put words in my mouth, and you took us down this path for no fucking reason, all because you're too scared to debate me about anything with real content in it.
Okay, so... Now, let me just remember what the claim is. Okay, so it sounded there like you said that you don't affirm this claim. So I just want to make sure we're talking about the same claim. Do you defend the claim that it's necessarily the case that if someone is raised in society, they'll know what you mean by bad?
Yes.
Okay, and you mean logically necessary, right? Remember, it's necessary under all modalities. Remember when you said that?
Because I didn't know which one you were referring to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wait,
remember...
so do you not take the view that this is logically necessary?
That what's logically necessary?
Uh,
It is not purely logically necessary, no.
but is it logically necessary?
Of course.
Okay, so it's logically necessary that if someone is raised in society, they know what you mean by bad, right?
Given the reality, yes.
That it sounds like you're adding some condition. I just want
Yes,
to know.
because I said it's not purely logically necessary.
Okay, but I want to know about just the claim I'm giving, if you agree with this or not. So if the claim is just, it's a necessary truth that if someone is raised in reality, they'll know what you mean by bad. Do you think that's true?
Yes.
Okay. And necessity there, that's logical necessity, right?
It's not purely logically necessary. Of course not. You're
When
not going to arrive at that just by some kind of logical process of deduction or whatever.
Okay,
Of
so
course not.
right, so you don't think, so to be clear, you don't think it's logically necessary.
No, I do, but so you are assuming something that has yet to be justified, which is that logical necessity is premised by the pure procedure and form of logical necessity. Well, the Hegelian view is different. According to the Hegelian view, there is no contradiction. From the Hegelian perspective, for example, the logical necessity about why, I don't know, history unfolds in the way it does is actually suspended in, like, there's an actual logical necessity in reality itself. So this distinction you're drawing between necessity and actuality is a completely unfounded, unjustified. You are trying to isolate pure logic, right? But to me, there's no pure logic. Logic rests upon a sense of reality. So no, of course, according to pure logic, no.
Okay, so
Pure logic, a pure logical deduction will not allow us to arrive at any claim about the substantive content of reality. When we're doing pure logic is what? It's mathematics. What else can we do but math?
okay, so when you say that it's a necessary truth that if someone's raised in society, they know what you mean by bad, do you think that a contradiction is entailed if it's the case that they're raised in society and don't know what you mean by bad?
So you just affirmed something and said the opposite and said, is that logically inconsistent? Is that what you're saying?
No, I said I said, do you think that a contradiction is entailed by someone if I say someone exists, someone was raised in society and doesn't know what you mean by bad? Do you think there's a contradiction there?
Yeah, it contradicts reality.
Wait, but I'm asking you if that.
You see how I reject the way in which you're trying to isolate logic, pure logic?
No, one second. I wasn't asking does it contradict reality, which is to. Yeah, sorry. I'm asking, is the situation described contradictory? Right? The situation described isn't reality. I'm not
This
asking...
is what you don't understand. I'm a Hegelian. So for me, you cannot actually isolate the pure form of logic from its actual reality.
You don't
That's
think...
the issue here.
I don't know if I'm asking you to do anything like that. All I'm asking is, do you think...
Now, if you said in a video game, I say, yeah, sure.
I'm just asking, do you think that it's that the situation described is contradictory?
Yes, because it contradicts reality.
No, but I'm not asking does it contradict reality? I'm asking if the situation described, right, which is not...
If the situation has no reality, how can I speak? What do I know what are you referring to? What situation are you referring to, if not a situation that has reality?
Yeah, so I'm talking about all of the propositions that are true in reality, all of the propositions in this
You're trying to put something in a vacuum that doesn't want to be in a vacuum. That's the issue.
It seems like it's really hard to, like, dude, I understand cutting off, but, like, you're very nippy. Like, you need to just, like...
Because you're wasting my time.
Look, if you think that doing philosophy is wasting your time, we don't have to continue.
You're not doing philosophy. You're doing computer nerd shit, which is not philosophy, by the way. I reject that analytic philosophy is philosophy. It's not philosophy. It's a fucking technical paradigm that happened in the 20th century. It has nothing to do with actual philosophy and history.
Off, though. Like, look, do you want to continue talking and actually hear what I have to say, or do you want to just cut me off every time I try to get a fucking
I'm
word?
waiting for you to actually grow the balls to fucking debate me about anything.
Well, I'm trying to address what we're talking about right now.
By the way, is this the result of the vegan diet? This is how you think and argue?
Look, if you're not gonna be at all serious, I'm gonna kind of like lose my interest. Like, I'm
I'm
happy to
100% serious. I wonder if you just had some chicken nuggets or you had a steak, you'd be able to fucking argue like a man and actually talk to me like a human being.
I mean, yeah, like, do you want to actually keep going, or are you just kind of going to ad homs like you don't want to keep like trying to defend?
I have proved I'm able to keep going.
Okay,
But
well
it's
then why
very
don't
clear.
you let me
You're
communicate?
behaving in a preposterous way. I mean, I feel like I already won this, and I think my chat agrees with me too. But
Okay,
I am
well,
actually curious if this is the result of the vegan diet, and it bolsters my point that vegans are fucking bad people. You've lost touch with humanity so
yeah,
much
you're just rambling
that
off
you
about.
can't even fucking argue about anything without breaking down everything in this fucking cold mathematical kind of way. It's completely fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to be like, I almost want to say like preached at, right? Like, I don't need to hear your screed about how
You are a bad person.
Yeah, I wait, I'm not getting, like, is this a kind of troll? Like, is this guy like trolling?
No, no,
Because if you're
no.
trolling, it's kind
You
of
are
funny, I guess.
genuinely a
But
bad person for lying about
Yeah.
your actual position.
okay, well, look, do you want to actually continue the conversation? Because I have things to say.
What do you want to
about...
continue? Continue it. Go say it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to just remember my place. I get distracted really easily if you go off like that. I have ADD, right? So it's like it's best to not like careen off into like talking about like vegans or your diet, a whole other shit, right? Okay, so yeah, what I'm asking is, do you think that the situation described entails a contradiction? And the situation described is just going to be some big set of propositions. It's like the same propositions that are true in reality, except we're going to change the propositions. We're going to add, like, you know, the proposition that there is some agent. We're going to add that they're raised in society, and we're going to add that they don't know what you mean by bad, right? Otherwise, same propositions are true.
Yeah,
in
I'm going
reality.
to argue that I am going to argue that it is logically contradictory because reality is a part, logic is a part of reality, and you can't divorce the two. So that's going to be my position. I was very clear about that.
Okay, so
You can't just create your own reality and then ask if it's logic. Listen, when you created your vacuum, your hypothetical world, when you created that, right?
Mhm.
You did something that is outside of the bounds of actual logic. So this is what it means to actually debate a Hegelian who knows what they're talking about and not a analytic philosophy undergrad. Okay, when you say is it logically necessary or whatever, logically contradictory, your vacuum is not justified as a proper domain of logic.
Um, there's some. You don't think that you can look at a set of propositions and tell me if it contains a contradiction?
It depends on if are they mathematical propositions or are they propositions that make claims about reality or a hypothetical reality, so to speak.
I guess first let's just start from, can sets of propositions be given? Where you
Well,
can
no,
look at the set of
propositions can clearly be given. Yes, they can.
That wasn't the question. Try to slow down a bit. The question was, can sets of propositions be given, which you can look at and determine whether they're consistent or not, which is to say whether they contain a contradiction or not.
Obviously, yeah.
Okay. Now, is there a reason that you can't do that with the set of propositions that is the same as the set of propositions that are true in reality, except which is a proper superset of that? So it
Yeah,
also
because you're
includes...
being too greedy about what you're trying to take from reality, and you're loading them into your propositions. So for example, for me,
I don't think you even let me say my sentence, man. Like, it's very hard to, you know.
Oh, say your sentence. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. So, yeah, you have some set of propositions, and so it starts with the set of propositions that are true in reality, right? And we're just going to go for like a proper superset of that, right? We're just going to add the proposition that there's some agent who's born in society, and that agent doesn't know what you mean by bad. And you can add any propositions that are like analytically tied to those or whatever, but Yeah, the question is, do you think that it's impossible to look at that set of propositions and tell me whether it contains a contradiction? And you're not making noise, just so you know.
Your propositions are greedy.
That's not an answer. Do you think it's possible to look at the set of propositions specified, which I'm just going to start referring to these like the set of propositions in reality. We're just going to call that alpha, and then beta is just going to be a proper superset of...
The vacuum.
Sorry,
The vacuum would be... I'm saying the vacuum would be logically inconsistent, even if you're trying to set it up as a vacuum, because there is a deeper logical,
I feel like
rational
you cut me off when I was just trying to lay out some fucking terminology to speed.
Yeah, because you want to say alpha is reality and beta is the hypothetical. Stop wasting our fucking time, dude.
And we want to be clear about the distinction, right? So alpha is just going to be the exact set of propositions it's going to be the set of propositions that have the same truth value as in reality, right? And beta is going to be a proper superset of alpha, where we're going to take the same propositions, but we're just also adding in those ones about the agent, and anything that's like analytically tied.
And also changing, it's a new reality.
That's beside the point. The question...
No, it's not besides the point. Well, it's a new reality. It's a different reality.
Yeah, I agree.
How could I...
That's not what I'm asking. Wait, you just said a random thing, which is that it's a different reality.
In alpha...
No, you just said a random thing, which says it's a different reality. Then we're about to go careening off on some fucking, like a cannonball there. Like, just calm down, right? So I'm not questioning about whether it's the same reality. Of course it's different if it's a proper superset of the propositions true in reality. Obviously it's a different reality. The question is... do you think that for some reason it's not possible to look at that set of propositions, to look at beta, and tell me whether beta contains a contradiction?
No, I think it is possible.
Okay, so, and you think beta does contain a contradiction?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It very clearly does.
Okay, right. So now we're finally back to where we were like almost 15 minutes ago, where I'm trying to go through the line of reasoning.
Guess what I'm going to say, though? Guess what I'm going to say as to why.
I don't know, but I almost don't care, because it's like I'm just trying to get through my...
Because it contradicts reality itself.
Okay, so the contradiction isn't that the person knows this proposition is true and doesn't know that it's true, right? The contradiction is something else? Or sorry, I misspoke. Knows what bad means and doesn't know what... sorry, I misspoke again. Knows what you mean by bad and doesn't know what you mean by bad.
That referred to the prior logical...
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
That referred to a different logical claim.
Yep, that's completely fine. Okay, so that's not what the contradiction is. What do you think... what propositions form the contradiction?
What do you mean?
Well, like a proposition is going to be...
reality. It contradicts reality itself.
And what's the contradiction?
Did you forget when I said it's not pure logic?
I asked you if you think there's a contradiction.
Did you forget when I said from the perspective of pure logic, no?
It's not,
did you forget that?
It's not worth trying to like just steal the line of questioning away from me. I'm trying to ask you something, okay? Now, you said there's a contradiction there. I'm just asking, what's the contradiction in beta?
The contradiction, the logical contradiction, is with regard to reality itself.
I didn't ask
the
what
nature
the
of reality.
I didn't ask
the nature of the nature of the reality. The nature of the sorry malfunction. Sorry. Cannot compute. Sorry. This is how you break the robot, guys.
Sorry. Now, I find it really difficult when someone does...
Sorry.
Look, I mean, do you want to have a serious conversation or not, right?
I've literally been trying, and you did what? Sorry. Why don't you let me finish what I'm trying to say?
Well, because before you started a massive over-talking competition with me right there, I had something to say about what you said, but God knows what the fuck that was now, right?
No, it's almost
like conversation is a little difficult when if the other person tries to talk, you just start fucking rambling at them. Like, can I just say some
You're
words?
okay, but you're accusing what I'm saying is rambling.
Well, how about you let me
Is
talk,
the
dude?
beginning
How
of
about,
you
how about,
conceding
how
that you're not
about you,
equipped to
how
actually
about,
engage with the
how
content
about
of
you
what I'm
sto-
saying?
How about you let me communicate, okay? Now,
Because you're wasting time that doesn't need to be fucking wasted.
okay, well, if you don't want to
Like my
try to,
position's very transparent, very clear. There's a lot of clarity to it. It's very simple,
yeah,
right?
if
And we're
you,
talking about alpha and beta. The reason I'm
yeah,
going
do
to
you,
argue that beta is logically inconsistent is because I'm arguing logic is a part of reality itself. Now, from the perspective
okay,
of so-called
wait, I
pure
have,
logic, I already made the argument. No, obviously, from the perspective of pure logic, there's no contradiction.
okay,
But I reject that pure
okay,
logic is impossible
okay.
in this regard.
It's really not helpful when I try to
I,
say
I
something.
reject that you can
Sorry.
divorce logic from reality. That was my argument initially.
It's really not helpful when I try to say something and then you careen off for a minute, like ad homing.
Okay,
Like,
if I let you say what you're gonna say
can I
and it's
get
a
a
bunch of
fucking
stupid
sentence
bullshit again,
across?
what do I get?
Can I
Send me
please?
$500
Can
if
I
what
get
you're
a
about to
sentence
say is a waste of
across?
time. Go ahead, say it. $500. Remember, say it. Go ahead.
Okay, so it's not helpful when you sit there, first of all, it's really hard to stay on, like I told you, I have ADD, right? It's like, it's hard to remember my train of thought when you're just butting in like that, okay? I don't mind interruption within reason, like if I'm straw manning you or, vice versa, it's fine. Cutting in within reason is good. I'm not some like anti-interruption
So who
Neanderthal.
judges that?
Oh my God, dude, just shut the fuck up, please, okay?
Who judges that?
Look, if you're gonna cut me off, I'm not.
Because you've interrupted me a lot too, by the way.
I think that I have interrupted you a few times. I don't think it's nearly to the degree that you've interrupted me, and I think my interruptions are far more reasonable.
Because I'm smarter than you and I can cut through the bullshit. That's why I interrupt you.
Look, it just seems like if I talk, you're just gonna start over talking me. So, unless look, I'm not asking you to never interrupt, but unless you're willing to like actually commit to letting me speak a reasonable amount, I'm probably not going to continue. Can you do that or not?
So you're gonna give up and concede?
I'm not conceding, but I'm
Yes,
not.
you are. Yes, you are.
Well, maybe by your like mind reading logic, where you also tell me I have beliefs I don't have, right? But as far as I can tell, being the one who's actually in here, like in my subjective experience, having it, no, it's not the case.
Well, you live in the computer. You're in the computer, not in your subjective experience. You're in the computer.
Now, what I'm saying is just that I'm happy to continue a conversation with you, okay? But I need you to actually listen when I'm speaking, right? It can't just be...
I've been listening. You've just been repeating a dialogue loop.
You have no idea where I was about to go with that sentence because you cut me off halfway through. Okay?
Yes, I did.
This is the thing that people just like, it's like people struggle with this, okay? There's like two poles, okay? There's the never interrupt pole, which is very stupid because it's like...
You want to talk about the polls now?
Dude, I can't deal with you being this like...
Because you're low energy, you're not a good debater. People told me you're a tough debater. You're fucking weak.
Are you gonna let me speak or not, dude?
Low energy.
Okay, I'm gonna try getting an answer to that.
Low testosterone from no meat diet.
I'm gonna try it 5 times, but if I don't get a clear answer within that, I'm going to disengage. But keep in mind, a clear answer keeps me engaging. I have no desire to run at all. I'm happy to keep going, but
it sounds like you want to run away,
if
just
he
like
provide
the
a
little
clear
furry
answer,
animals run away from hunters.
If he can't provide a clear answer, though, then
you're running away like a bunny run away from a hunter. You're running away like a deer runs away from a hunter.
Here we go.
Run. I'm a tiger, my friend.
Try number 1, okay? And once we hit 5, again, if you want to answer clearly, happy to keep going. If you don't, I'm just going to take it as bad faith, and that'll be it for me. But it's you ending the conversation, not me, okay?
No, it's not. You are. You're conceding to me.
No, I'm putting an ultimatum to you, which is that you either affirm...
Yeah, well, you can put an ultimatum to leave the boxing ring, but you concede, you forfeit.
Which is that you either affirm, right, that you're actually going to give me a reasonable amount of time to speak, or that we stop talking, okay? Now, if you can do the former, I'm happy to continue. It's very obvious to everyone listening, okay? So I don't think you're going to have any luck saying, oh, you ran away, right? Because I'm right here, happy to talk. Just want to...
No, you've been running. You want to run away, that's okay. Make whatever excuses you want. Call it an ultimatum. You're making excuses.
Stop interrupting me. Now, here's the ultimatum, okay? And I'll explain just a bit of perspective around it for a second if I'm able to get, a few sentences out, which seems like a fucking struggle with you, okay? Now, I think that there's kind of two poles, okay? There's people who are going to say you should never interrupt, and there's people who are going to be like you and interrupt way the fuck too much, okay? And both are cancerous, right? The never interrupt people.
Balls!
Okay, that's one fail. Remember, 5 and we're just done, okay? Now, the never interrupt side, right? I don't like that point of view because I think that a lot of the time interruption facilitates the kind of goals that I have in a conversation. Oftentimes we want to get to the truth, for example, and it's faster to get to the truth if someone is going off point and you see where, if you can just cut them off, right? So of course some interruption is going to be merited. I'm not going to go all the way to the extreme and say none, right? On the other hand, there's people like you who interrupt fucking constantly, right? To a point that I feel like I can't even process my thoughts because I get cut off at the second I start getting like, a few seconds into articulating them, right? That's not helpful because it prevents me from actually thinking clearly and communicating my views, okay? So can you actually commit not to never interrupting, you're welcome to interrupt, but to giving me enough space to actually communicate my ideas?
Can you define the parameters with which we will be able to judge doing that?
Now,
is there a neutral judge who's going to decide that?
I think that we know, but I think that we can give each other. I think that even without a perfect standard, okay, I think I'm asking for a bit longer than you're currently giving me. Do you understand what a bit longer means? I don't think we need a perfect judge for that.
Please define it. I don't understand the meaning. Please define it.
Okay. I take it that you're trolling, right?
No, I'm not trolling. How can you say that? In a hypothetical world where I was not trolling, is that logically consistent?
Look, it's like part of me wants to respond, point out what the side things are doing.
Please do it. Please do it.
Please stop, okay? Part of me wants to respond, point out why the side tangents don't all make sense, right? Because you actually, I really have a problem with the way that you debate, right? I think that I don't know if it's intentional, but it's like a deceptive kind of style of debate. Okay, you might not like people who come in heavy on the formal logic and who try to be very systematic. Okay, but I have way more of a problem with people who try to light tons of little fires, throw tons of shade, and just really make it fucking difficult to get to the actual argument. Okay, and earlier I said I'm not convinced you're obfuscating. Now I'm leaning towards I think you are kind of obfuscating. Okay.
So you're conceding.
Now, just listen, okay?
That's what it sounds like to me. You're conceding.
Well, you might want to get your ears checked then. Now...
It sounds like you're giving up.
Okay. So let me just remember what I was saying, because it's very hard to remember when talking to someone like this. Okay, so yeah, I asked if you can commit to actually giving me enough room to speak. Right? And you said, oh, where's the objective judge of enough room to speak? Okay. And I said, I don't think there is one. So let me just ask for this. Can I get a little more room? Okay. And I think we know what a little more room is, right? It's like I get to talk for longer than the amount of time I'm currently able to talk before you butt in.
Well, actually, philosophers disagree about the nature of time. Longer can actually mean many things in philosophy. Longer can, for example, mean something at a scale of thousands of years.
Okay,
and
provide your meaning, and I'm probably fine with it. What do you typically mean when you say longer?
Typically, longer will refer to a quantitatively greater sum of time.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. That's what I mean. Okay, so I'll
give you 1 second, 1 millisecond.
Okay, you are kind of funny, but you're fucking annoying though, dude. Like, I don't know how to deal with people like you. It's like you kind of tread the line between like running arguments and trolling, right?
Yeah, I can usually tell my opponents conceded when they start narrativizing the debate itself.
Oh yeah, I'm only narrativizing till I get a commitment to, first of all, yeah, so this is meta discussion, I understand that, but we're only here until I get a commitment that you'll actually like listen when I talk, and then we can go back to substance. Right?
Can you commit to the understanding that you talk too much and you say too little for how much you talk?
No.
So you don't think that sometimes I can perceive what you're trying to say and that you continuing to talk is just wasting my time?
That's not what I said, but that's also starting like a side topic, right? I'm I'm not against the idea that sometimes you know where someone's going. Maybe you see why it's irrelevant, or you want to jump ahead and you want to butt in. That's fine. I'm telling you, you're butting in too much. Okay, it's beyond what's warranted by that kind of reason for butting in.
Okay, you're gonna cry?
I don't think so. You
So why do I care?
Well, I mean, you only care about things I cry about, or?
I care about defeating you and destroying you utterly. I am going to have victory over you. That's what I care about.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can try your best, I guess. Do you want to, like, give me enough space to speak if we go back to the actual topic? You've been better about listening to me talk about meta than listening to me talk about the actual topic.
You speak too much when I can already see the point you're getting at. You don't need to speak more. If I perceive you have something to say that's going to like be my Achilles heel, trust me, I'm going to let you say it. If I think you're just going to repeat a point that I already know you're going to repeat, I'm going to attempt to respond to it at haste. But you literally take 15 minutes to say shit. And there are multiple examples of this throughout this entire conversation where you went on tangents. You've said the equivalent of what in the written form would be novels, right? Of false interpretations and false premises as to what I have actually said. Like, for example, we can name all. Do you want to name all the examples?
What I want is just for you to be clear, okay? Are you going to give me more time to speak? Not a second, like legitimately give me some time to speak, okay? I've asked once, and I.
Wait,
okay.
Hold on.
Now listen.
Back to the debate. Why is it that you can ask me for more time, but I can tell you?
Not happening. Stop dodging, please.
So you concede this point.
Please stop dodging, man. You're like
horrible. No, you're conceding this point. What makes what you're asking me any different from what I told you about good and bad?
God, how do people like deal with this?
I don't know. How do they deal with it?
Listen, we're not going back to talking about good or bad or any of the discussion.
But you're asking me when you ask me for more time, you're asking for the same thing. How do I know what you mean? What do you mean by that?
What do I mean? We already clarified. I'm using your concepts. I'm saying what you mean.
More time, yeah. I give you 1 more millisecond than usual.
I'm asking for longer.
That is a qualitatively greater. How long do you want?
Well, so that's the hard thing, because I don't think that you want to put I don't think it works like that, where it's like a flat time limit. But I'd say if you...
Why not? So you can't define it? It's meaningless. Do you affirm that it's meaningless?
Sorry.
You affirm that you have no meaning?
It's impossible to talk to you, man. I'm trying to get a fucking sentence across, and all you're doing is interrupting me, okay? Look, do you want to have an actual philosophical conversation, or do you just want to be a fuckhead?
I'm here to conquer and your server.
Okay, well, look, not to be a dick, but you're getting fucking wrecked. You couldn't even handle the discussion, and you're trying to force it into...
One's in the chat if I'm getting wrecked, two's in the chat if he's getting wrecked.
Why would I care about your chat, right? I have no clue.
Why would I care about you?
I didn't ask you to, right?
So why would you say it as though I care? Anyone cares what you have to say? My audience doesn't give a fuck about that stupid shit you just said. My audience overwhelmingly agrees I wrecked you. Overwhelming. The over 1,000 people who are watching this agree with me that I wrecked you.
I'm stating my point of view, okay?
Dude, you're getting wrecked. According to who?
Now, look. It seems like all you want to do is troll, dude. Like, if you want to have an actual...
That's your cope. I've been very thorough about actually committing to arguing, but the problem is that you waste time by saying too little, too long.
I think that you're kind of in the middle, right? Where you kind of run arguments, but then you also troll. And, I'm not going to necessarily
because you're a ridiculous person.
Sorry,
that's why.
I'm trying to get a sentence
across.
You're
a ridiculous person. That's why I am
trying to get a sentence across. Thank you. Okay. Now, it's a bit suspicious to me, right? That when I talk to you, right, you make it such a fucking challenge to just get a few sentences across. Okay. To me, it's looking like you have a very hard time dealing with what I actually have to say about the topic. You don't think you can win, so you're going for trolling. Okay, that's my guess. But if you want to have an actual discussion, I'm happy to. Now, I'm just going to ask this one more time. And if I hear anything other than just a clear answer, that will be it for me. Okay? Clear answer as in a yes or a no. Can you give me a reasonable amount of time to speak if we return to the subject? Yes or no?
I'm making fun of you because you're a ridiculous
Okay,
person.
so that's going to be the end of my discussion. But Avi,
Okay, I accept
do you
your
feel,
defeat. I accept your
Avi,
defeat.
do you feel like
I
wrecking
accept
him
your
also?
surrender. I accept your surrender wholeheartedly.
Sorry, I was just asking. Avi, did you want to also wreck the guy or no? Are you there? I have it recording if you want me to capture you like pwning him also.
I love how you're coping that you pwned me. No one
Okay.
else agrees with you.
I
Your
think-
12 friends agree with you. Thousands of people agree with me.
I think that's probably it then. If you want to talk to other good debaters in here, Ruckster's pretty good. Yeah, I'd recommend Ruckster. Chum's okay. Or if Avi shows up, Avi can defend like, you know, the same kind of view I've been defending here. But, you know, I'll just make a closing statement. So this is kind of where I'm going to leave off, and I am just warning you, if you fucking say a word while I'm trying to get my closing statement, you will be muted, okay? I want to get my fucking closing statement across without being talked over. Okay, so all I would say in closing here is I actually am happy to continue this discussion. I just want it to continue seriously, and I want it to continue where I actually have a reasonable amount of time to speak. I'm sure anyone watching this back who's a reasonable person will see that I was getting interrupted to a degree that just makes the conversation difficult. I'm not completely against interruption, but there's a point where it's excessive, and that point was reached for me. With respect to the actual topic, I would say a few things. So the original claim was that vegans are bad people, or later, despite their protests to the opposite, vegans are bad people. So I'm not clear what the claim means. I want to understand what Has means when he says the word bad. Now, I don't think he's really been able to clarify that, and I think that's kind of his burden. If he wants to make those kind of claims and argue about them, he can find a way to communicate what he means by the terms in his sentence. Then with respect to this other claim that we had our kind of second debate about, which is that it's a necessary truth that any agent raised in society will know what he means by bad. I question when I say I want to know what way is that necessary, and we know Has thinks among other modalities that it's logically necessary. Okay, when we ask if it's logically necessary, it's not clear what exactly the contradiction is, and I wasn't able to really get clarity on that. Earlier, we got a contradiction on, I guess, what was another topic, possibly, but yeah, I wasn't able to get clarity on what he actually thinks the contradiction is there, and he seemed too committed to trolling, so that's kind of like where I'd pick it up if he wants to defend the same claim. You can have the last word. I'm happy to listen, but like I'm not really going to respond.
Sure, it's interesting how you it's interesting how you try to pack your debates into the closing statement. I have 3 prongs to my closing statement. The reason why I was being so difficult with you with regard to you asking for more time is because I was trying to make a point in demonstrating that it is just as ridiculous for me to ask you to define how much time you need as it is for you to ask me to define the meaning of good and bad. That was actually the reason for that. That's why you're such a ridiculous person that I have to just make fun of you to get the point across. The second thing about you saying that I am unable to clarify the meaning of what good and bad is,
Hey, brother, your mic's still coming through. You might want to.
the meaning of good and bad are suspended in actual reality itself, and that it is not possible to convey that without reference to the fundamental intuitions and unconscious associations that are derived from society, nature, or whatever else you want to call it, that give sense to the word good and bad. The third prong of my closing statement is that you actually played a trick when it came to this discussion about logical necessity. Now, for the first argument, I said that I am not making a claim about logical necessity but reality. Then we continued it, but what actually happened was that there was a confusion on your part about what we were actually talking about when it came to logical necessity. I argued that it actually was indeed true, that it is logically necessary, given the premise at hand, the premise being that if one derives their sense of good and bad from society, okay, then the conclusion can follow after. Given that premise, the conclusion that you draw is indeed necessary from a logical perspective. Not strictly logical, but indeed necessary from a logical perspective. You confuse that with the claim that the premise itself is logically true, and moreover, logically true on account of
Microphone again, brother.
the pure form of some kind of logical procedure. The third thing about that is that I actually rejected the way in which you attempted to isolate logical consistency from reality itself. I forwarded a Hegelian position according to which logic is part of reality. Reality, in a sense, is immanently logical. Logic does not simply belong to the domain of abstract propositions and not simply belong to the realm of basically mathematics. Now, you actually made, I actually was very clear about why your hypothetical universe, your vacuum in which the contrary was true, would be logically inconsistent because it would violate the deeper logic underlying our very reality, the reality we have now. I rejected your hypothetical and I claimed it would be logically inconsistent because of that. That's not the same as demonstrating that it's logically impossible from the perspective of pure logic. The whole point was that I rejected this notion of pure logic. For me, logic is necessarily entwined with reality. There's no pure logic whatsoever that you can engage in. And it's if you do, you're not actually engaging with the full breadth of what logic is. This was clearly a decisive and tactical victory for me and for meat eaters the world over. Guys, this is an example of a harrowing example of the consequences of a vegan diet on the human brain and on the capacity to engage in rational discussion. If you want an argument for why you shouldn't be a vegan, you should watch this debate because this is probably the best one anyone could make. Eat meat and you will prevail.